About a year ago, Mark told us a story of when he was working in an office block as an electrician. And he was trying to pull some cables through a conduit in the ceiling. And he was pulling and pulling, and it wouldn't budge. Finally, he decided to give one almighty haul, and he just threw his body back as he pulled, and it gave. It started moving. And he said in that instant of it moving, he just heard his spine go crack, 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 crack. And he thought, I've injured myself. But he said when he let go of the cables and just stood, he'd never felt so good in all his life. He'd basically given himself an osteopathic adjustment. And he said he was walking around feeling amazing all week. And so what basically happened was each of his vertebrae had just clicked like this, like each vertebra had just adjusted itself relative to the one beneath it. So that's the main adjustment that we need to make. So the way we live our lives, first of all, having a vertical spine. Secondly, not getting enough vigorous exercise. And having anxiety in one's life will all tend to make this happen. Will all tend to just bring depression, a heavy heart. The last thing we want is for our meditation to contribute towards that, which it will tend to do if you're not really careful. So now let's just try just adjusting, doing our own little adjustment on the spine. So we've been using the stick, but the stick has sort of limited value. So let's just try to just put the hands on the knees. And now what we're going to do now is just lean back. Think of thrusting your thymus upwards, pulling the head back a little bit, and just trying to really arch the spine, but gently, and just use your mind just to scan through the vertebra from the sacrum at the bottom and just up through the vertebra until you get to the atlas, which is the top one before the skull. And just imagine your skull is just another vertebra on the chain. And then just relax. And now the same thing, but now with the hands behind the head. So, or the neck or the back of the head. And again, just leaning, pushing your head back into your hands and just arching. And then just relax. And now let's use the stick. There's two obvious places in the spine which are problematic, where the lumbar spine joins the thoracic spine and where the thoracic spine joins the cervical spine. So the bump at the back here, like the dowager's hump, where the neck joins the thorax, and then here, where the lumbar spine joins the thoracic spine. So let's start at the bottom one first. So just bringing the stick down. And just find that point. You can't do a lot with the stick. You can imagine the stick is sort of pushing it forwards, but really you're just sort of locating it. Roll the stick up and down a little bit over that area. So it's sort of opposite the solar plexus. So it's quite an important point. So for the Greeks, what's beneath this point was considered the lower body, and what's above this point was considered the upper body. So the upper body was to do with day, consciousness, and the lower body to do with night and unconsciousness. So there was like a big break there. And we at least want the spine just to be able to easily transmit energy through this point so it doesn't get blocked here. In order for this point not to collapse a little bit, the head and the thymus have to really swell, become light and very open. Light in the sense of not heavy, but also in the sense of not dark. And then just bring the stick up. Try and find that point. For me, it's a bit below there. If I push too much into that point where the cervix and the thorax join, then it's a bit counterproductive. So if I just go beneath it a little bit and then really pull, and now I can get that point in the lower back, in the, where we've just been working, I can get that point really pulling forwards. So somehow having the stick up here stabilizes this point that the stick is on, so that that lower point has got a bit of mobility in it. Putting the stick down. And now let's twist from here. So hands on the knees. You just sort of pull I'm going to pull this knee back and pull myself round. So like 1, 2, 3. And again, push in this point in the back that we all worked on with the stick to start with, so that the head is really sort of thrown back. And then the other knee. So 1, 2, 3. And 1, 2, 3. So John always used to say, if your posture's right, then the mind will naturally become quiet and settle in the dantian, and the spirit will naturally rise. So that's, your posture's like a springboard for your spirit to leap up from. So there needs to be a buoyancy in it, springiness, and the spirit should just wish to lift through that posture. Bring it into prayer. So have this opposite the thymus. So your middle fingers are directing that thymic energy upwards. The elbows are heavy and are with the dantian. Just reaching up, just one hand at a time, so just reaching. Think of that arm just becoming an extension of your spine, so you have to tip over quite a bit with the head to give the arm freedom. And then down. So it's the spirit that takes the hand up. And then the same thing, but just on the horizontal. And as far as you can, so you basically have to turn your head around to look behind yourself. And then, like you're pulling in a rope. Keep part of your mind on that point on the back where we first worked with the stick, where the thoracic and the lumbar spine join. So that's the point that we need to have pushing in all the time. And that will just project the thymus upwards. So when we try and control ourselves mentally, physically, emotionally, then that's the point that suffers. Fists either side, and now just the same thing really, but now just punching to the side. Feel the stretch all the way from the mid-thorax down, across the shoulder blade, down the arms. Push that point in the back in. And then just resting a sec. I find this really useful. So when I'm meditating, if I feel my spine tending to sort of get a bit heavy, then I'll just, from here, I'll just come into here and just arch. Lifting the arms above the head. And just try and get it to come from the spine. So imagine my spine is going to arch back, and I use that just to lift the arms. And then just slowly deflate a little to let the arms down. So when the arms are up, the hands are apart, and your head is really pulled back, and you're sort of looking at a point on the ceiling right above you. So you just want to locate a point just above your body, above your head. So let's try again. So again, the spine becomes a little bit more erect, and that lifts my arms. And slowly my head pulls back. And then I'm just gazing at this point on the ceiling. And then slowly down. So do it once more. And this time, once you've fixed your gaze on that point, just imagine that your heart is coming out and going up towards that point, arching the back. That lifts the arms. And then slowly down. Coming into your own meditation posture, but now with this really good spine. And just a sense that if you close your eyes and your mind is quiet, you can induce a sense of your soul, if you like, floating up through you and resting on that point in the ceiling, almost like you're above yourself, looking down on you. So let's stand up now. using one of your hands, just locate that point on the back where the lumbar spine and the thoracic spine join. So in a way, it's easier to feel that point than it is the min meng. The min meng's not far from it. It's only like that far, that distance. Feel that point on the back, and just this sense that when you get your posture right, what's beneath that point is really driving downwards through the legs. And what's above that point is lifting upwards. Feel the two extremes, really. So the absolute outward, so the extending spine, my lower back, from that point down, going down, but also behind, and my upper back rearing up, almost a sense of going back this way. It's almost like my spine is trying to become part of a circle like this. And it will tend to bring you sort of onto the front of the foot a bit more than the heels. The heels are still there, but there's something in you that's just itching to fly forwards. So it's tending to make you drift into the front of the foot more. And it has real spirit, this real spirit of adventure, of wanting to just expand beyond your known world. So we want to feel that as making us want to come up and out, but equally making us want to go down and back. So there needs to be that balance. So this is the force. It doesn't just make us rush forwards, it also keeps us rooted. Feel that point on the spine. It's probably different in different people, but for me, it is this point that we were working on, from which you drop a root and from which you extend the shoot of the seedling upwards. And there's just a sense of readiness. So you're ready to go, you're raring to go. And that is really just thymus. That's the spiritedness that thymus represents. And then the other extreme is just the yielding, really, the container. So this is like wanting to extend out. And then once you've found something, once you've gone venturing into the world, gone hunting, if you like, and you find something that needs to be caught, possessed, that's when you need to produce the container. So that's the opposite. So this is the pulling in of the belly and the rounding out. And now I'm making a circle this way with my spine. So my spine is the back of this circle here, whereas before my spine was the front of a circle like this. You can go from one to the other quite easily. What's difficult is just finding the place in the spine from which this movement comes. For me, again, it's this point here. I just push this point in my back in. So it's just opposite here, solar plexus. I push that forwards. And then here I can push this in and it will just bow the other way. So let's just try this. So just coming forwards, bearing your chest, coming onto the front of the foot so you can sort of lift the heels a little bit. Reaching out and hugging, containing, pulling yourself back so that there's a container for this thing that you've caught. And now just pushing that point in the back forwards. You want that to release your root, your tail, down and back, and also release your thymus up. And then I reach around and draw something in and contain. Get that going as a bit of a rhythm. You just want to feel the extremes in the emotion. So this is quite fierce and brave. And then this is sort of compassionate and a little bit tearful. So here you could scream. This is like the battle cry as you charge to your death. And then this is you just bringing the other in and just producing like this sort of oneness. So the important on this bit is just making sure that it's releasing your tail as well as your chest. We tend to forget the lower body. Same thing here, really. It's not just my head coming forwards and over, it's my tail coming under. Bring it into the breathing exercise, but it's basically the same thing. This is just the same thing, but just not quite so extreme. But it's there. And the struggle really is just trying to work in such a way that what you're trying to do happens naturally. So you just have to find these creatures inside yourself. This tends to be the difficult one, I suspect, now, because we're not very good at fighting. riding horse. So you're sort of in the middle here. So you could spring into action, or you could suck into a yield. So keep to a yielding mind. Really, what it means is that you're constantly ready to yield. It doesn't mean that you've already yielded. It just means that you're going through life willing to do this at the slightest provocation. But in order to get up in the morning, in order to leave the house, in order to do anything really, you need this first. You need the thymus reaching out and the root reaching down, the tail. And if you find the mind coming back to thinking to itself, then it just means that this point in the back here has just collapsed. Because when this point comes in properly and your lumbar and thoracic spine join up without a break, then this cannot think. It has to be so vigilant and alert. It can't take a break in order to start complaining to itself. Okay, now let's just try that, lifting the arms above the head, but from standing. So make sure your front foot has got the big toe coming in a little bit, so the outside edge straight. And quite a long stance, so longer than a Tai Chi posture, really. So it's really the yoga warrior pose. So I'm coming into the front foot. So imagine someone's hand is on your sacrum. Put your own hand on your sacrum. So you want that sacrum to be like a platform that the other person's hand can just rest on. And then you just allow that other person just to drive the sacrum down and forwards, so that you now have more weight in the front foot. And then, like we were doing when we were sitting down, just use the spine, arch the spine back in order to lift the arms above the head, pulling the head back and getting the heart to reach up between the hands. Try and keep the back leg as straight as you can. And then slowly down. And then just bring the back foot up and send the other one back. You just got to experiment with this and see what suits you best. So long and narrow. So you have to be careful you don't tip to the side when you bring the arms up. Again, just feel your sacrum. Put your hands on your sacrum. It's almost like your sacrum is lifting into your hands. You want the sacrum to feel really like a secure platform for the hands. And then just imagine your hands are someone else's and they're just pushing the sacrum down and forwards, which is really driving you into that front foot. Keep the back leg straight. So the weight is going into the front foot, but your tail is very much, your tail and your sacrum very much angling down the back leg. And then the arms up again. Keep those hands on your sacrum, those imaginary hands pushing down. And then slowly down. So this is where having a prayer is useful. Like the Lord's Prayer, it takes about 30 seconds. So you just have your hands up and then just say that to yourself, and then you know you've been there for half a minute. Okay, now let's just try against the wall. What's useful about this, you can just feel how much you can get into the front foot, because remember that rule, we don't want our knee to go beyond our toes. So if my toes are touching the skirting board, then I just bring my knee forwards until it's touching the wall. And then I know that I'm in position. Feel the sacrum going down the back leg, let the shoulders come back, and just put your hands on the wall. So I want, again, this imaginary hand on my sacrum. So this hand here is pushing down like this, which is tending to get my head to go back a little bit, and is tending to get the hands trying to push the wall upwards. So you can either have the two hands on the wall, like in push, or you can have like the press. Feel the two legs, very much like my front leg is doing all the supporting, but my back leg is quite springy and dynamic and providing energy that comes up my spine and extends backwards. And then just come up. Want to feel the work, especially in the lower back. The work in the lower back is squeezing my sacrum into my tail, squeezing my tail into my back hamstrings down into the ground, but also pushing my head up and back and my thymus up towards the ceiling. Careful when you come up. Bring it back. the familiar. Just come forwards and back a little bit first. So extending the spine, coming forwards onto the front of the foot a little bit. So this sense that this is lifting, but my tail is directing down, and then just sucking into the yielding, the container. John used to get us to imagine like one of those warrior breastplates, that the Greeks used to wear. Bronze, they'd burnish it, they'd really polish it so that if they caught the sun, it would be in the enemy's eyes. So that's real thymus, this sense that you have a big medallion here and it's gleaming and glittering. So this is where you are, this is you. And then just hugging. And now let's turn side to side, but using that action. So what I want to do is do this part, but use the drive down into this foot to push me round. So I'm turning to the side. And then this is the yielding part as I come back to the front. And then here again, pushing into this leg. So I don't want this leg to push me up, remember. I want my tail to drive down that leg. And then this has got real power, connected power. Contain as I come back to the front. So attacking, going out into the world by turning away from my foot. And then I come back by yielding towards the center. Feel this rooting as much as anything. So here I'm rooting down this leg. And then here, as I gather, I'm sort of catching here with this leg. Just keep this point on the back. everything up from there driving upwards, everything down from there driving downwards. So that point on the back, you can strike it on this. So it's more useful than striking them, the Ming men. Feel those 3 points: thymus, sacrum going into the tail, and then this point in the back, which is where they separate from. Now just the hands behind the head, and then just go down into the posture, and then just come forwards, and then just pull back. So really it's an exercise for the lower back. I pull my head up without my lower back coming up, and then I straighten up a bit. And now let's squat down. Keep the mind in that point on the back. So you're trying to get that to go forwards. This is more difficult. Bring the feet together, knees together, and just squatting from here. You need to send the arms out, otherwise you'd probably fall backwards. Trying to keep the spine flat, not vertical, but flat. Feet apart again. And now just coming onto the toes and just bringing the head up. So like sumo. Feel that really dynamic wobble when you don't have the heels, when you don't have the opportunity of stabilizing with the heels. And then just bring the hands off the knees. And feel that point in the back. It's easier to feel here because the spine can sort of arch a little bit. And now let's just straighten the leg. And then just moving across into that foot. back to the middle. And now the feet just a bit wider. And now just thread your hands through your legs and just put your hands on your feet. And then up. Just have the feet up a bit. Imagine we're going to start the form. Yeah, so to get this sense of really just being able to drop between the legs, we need this mobility in the sacrum. So it's just swinging it slightly. Imagine the tip of your tail is pointing. And we just want the legs to be really loose and soft so they can just accommodate this movement. And if I can, I try to have my mind in this point in the back. That will mean that it's going to be very difficult for me to look down on what I'm doing. I just need to trust that what I'm doing is correct and keep the thymus endlessly buoyant. The desire in my tail to reach down and burrow into the ground helps this release upwards. So the root has to extend out of the seed and drive down into the ground to find nutrients and stability before the shoot can come out of the seed and reach out of the ground and up towards the sun. So it's a beautiful image. And then just get it figure of eighting, which is what it wants to do. The figure of eight is just a natural means to continuity, especially if you're going to not move your feet, not going to step. I can only turn one way before I have to come back. And then using that to step. Use my tail. Throw it round this foot. Bring up this knee. big toe, and then around heel, around the outside edge of the heel, through the outside edge of the foot, little toe, all the way through to the big toe. Feel the components of the foot. It's a big toe. So we have the stability of the heel, and then we have the toe. So each toe has got like a different energy, a different character. So there's at least 5 things operating together in this final posture. And even the heel has got left and right side, back and front. And it's like going through the fingers of the hand. So the thumb is the heel. Bring it back to riding horse. Point on the back. If you sort of cross the arms over, if you sort of do this behind yourself, and it tends to lie across that point. I want my hips, my sacroiliacs released. So a real sense that you're folding into these points here. And that's getting your tail to really go back, to release. So when we're doing this, when we're coming onto the front of the foot and really arching the back, effectively we've got 2 front feet. And then when we do the yielding like this, we've effectively got 2 back feet. So let's just try a little bit more of this. So just letting your posture really open out. And then curling around something. Opening out. Great for me because I've got a view here which is about 5 kilometers. And so I can just really look into the distance. So I have a distance. Wrapping around now, really coming back to the here and now, to the particular. And then just reaching out beyond that into what you cannot know because it's just too far. But part of you has gone there. And then bringing it in. So reaching out to the bigger picture. And then bringing yourself and anything you've captured back. Riding horse, which is very much like sort of trembling in the middle of those two. You're sort of schizoid, you're in two minds. Part of you is wanting to reach out, but part of you is wanting to hug in. And now let's bring it up, finish. Feel the loose, the potential in the sacrum. So like it's always restless. And just feel the room. So when we work with the spine like we have today, then the spirit just becomes a lot more free. So I only need to look up to that corner, and that's where I've gone. You're not just trapped inside this body. And the mechanism we use to keep ourselves locked inside our body, inside ourselves, is the thinking mind. So all of this, it just requires that to sort of quieten down. forget self and become one with the Tao. So for our purposes, the Tao is simply energy.